history about the Strand. The Strand was founded in 1927 by Benjamin Bast on 4th Avenue's Book Row. Stretching from Union Square to Astor Place, Book Row gradually dwindled from 48 bookstores until, after 93 years, the Strand is the sole survivor, now run by third-generation owner Nancy Bass Wyden. So, tonight I am excited to introduce Ernest Cline. Ernest is the #1 New York Times bestselling author of Ready Player One, Armada, and now Ready Player Two. He's also the co-screenwriter of Ready Player One, the blockbuster movie directed by Steven Spielberg. In 2011, Ernest Cline published his blockbuster debut, Ready Player One, filled with the irresistible nostalgia and depicting a future changed by social media, virtual reality, and video games. This cinematic novel was immediately embraced by readers, booksellers, and critics alike around the world, and went on to spend more than 100 weeks on the New York Times bestseller list. And it was adapted into the hugely successful blockbuster movie directed by Steven Spielberg, with the screenplay co-written by Ernest. Now, 9 years later, we are extremely excited that Ready Player Two has been published and was an instant #1 bestseller on all 3 New York Times bestseller lists, print, audio, and ebook. Plus, it's #1 on the LA Times bestseller list, #1 on the Indie bestseller list, and #1 on Amazon for the week. It doesn't get better than that. The response is truly as great as it gets. Once again, Ernest is taking us on another imaginative and epic venture in the Oasis, with Wade Watts and his friends, and jolting us thrillingly into the future once again. We read it as soon as it went on sale, and it's truly awesome. Joining Ernest is our very own Ready Player mega fan and Ohio native, Luis Rodriguez. So without further ado, please join me in welcoming Luis and Ernie to the stage.
Hello. On behalf of all of us at the store and the fans watching, congratulations on the publication of Ready Player Two. We absolutely love the book, and we love seeing it on track to be the biggest fiction book of 2020. So congrats and a big, big thank you.
Thank you so much. A little bit of an echo.
A little bit of one. Ready Player 2 is now on sale in the US and UK and will publish in over 50 countries around the world early next year. And again, I cannot ask for a better birthday present as well. It came out on my birthday, so thank you.
Thank you.
Clearly, readers love the book and love the world you created. After working so hard on the book for so long, how does it feel to get this response? #1 on every bestsellers list. Not a problem.
Okay, now I think I fixed it. Could you go ahead and repeat that question?
Yeah, you got it.
Wonderful.
Clearly, readers love the book. They love the world you created. After working so hard on the book for so long, how does it feel to get the response? #1 on just about every bestseller list.
It just feels wonderful. You know, I kind of I've been writing the book in isolation for the past couple of years and working really hard on it, and had the readers and fans of my first book, in my head the whole time. I was trying to do right by them and give them, more of what they enjoyed in the first story, but also kind of take the characters and the story and the technology described in the story to a new level. And usually I get to go out on a book tour and, see people in person and hear their reactions right away. And that's not the case this time. So it's really wonderful to see fans react the way they have and embrace it. And several of my super fans have, emailed me over the past week to tell me how much they enjoyed it. And so that has really just been wonderful to hear. And I'm really grateful.
That's fantastic. In Ready Player One, you imagine the near future where the world endured a pandemic, was in severe economic depression, reality TV stars were elected political leaders, kids attended school remotely via virtual classrooms. Basically, humanity escapes the ugly real world to the safety of a virtual universe. Your vision's feeling especially prescient as we sit here today. What's it been like seeing your science fiction become reality in so many ways?
Well, some ways really exciting, and in other ways really disturbing. It's when I was crafting Ready Player One in the real world in the 2045 of the story, I wanted to make the real world kind of as unpleasant as possible because it seemed like that would further drive people into the retreat of the oasis. So I did a lot of research about things that could potentially happen and the long-term effects of climate change, which is real, by the way, folks at home. And also the way that the virtual reality technology I thought was going to evolve, but it really took off and evolved much quicker than I anticipated. The Ready Player One was published in 2011, and the first virtual reality headsets I think became commercially available in 2016. So in a period of 5 years, as opposed to 10 or 20 years in my story. And that was one thing that, I was kind of confronted sitting down to write Ready Player Two. A lot of it wasn't science fiction anymore. And I was, this past year, I've been using virtual reality myself all the time to play games and also to keep in touch with my friends and family. I sent VR headsets to a lot of them just so we can hang out online and spend time together this year. So that's been that part of it. Seeing the technology actually come about and the way it connects people has been really wonderful. But some of the other elements of the story, I didn't expect to come true so soon. Like the pandemic that kills Samantha Cook's parents. It's just a real brief scene when they're talking in Ready Player One, but he asks how her parents died, and she says in a flu pandemic. And that was one of the things that I knew just from my research that a lot of scientists were predicting was going to happen sometime in the next 2-3 decades. But again, I didn't think it would be so soon. So I feel much more prescient than I would like to answer your question.
Definitely. Going along with that, so Ready Player One does have like an epic love story in it, and the story continues in Ready Player Two. The first book, we see your two leads fall in love, and we get the happily ever after ending for them. The second, we see the realities of the relationship and their different worldviews, and learn that love doesn't magically solve their problem. Many young readers will no doubt learn about relationship through these characters. What are some of the books or movies that had relationships you learned from a young person? Was it important to you to complicate the relationship in this way?
It was, and I don't know if it was drawing from fiction in my youth, but it was just my own experience. When you're, some people get lucky and, meet their true love in high school and they're able to kind of grow and change together and stay together. But most people I know, the relationships that they have in their teens and 20s don't end up being long-term relationships because you're still growing and changing as a person, and you have a lot to learn about being a good partner, and people change. So I knew that was one problem that would be confronting Wade and Samantha, where I left them at the end of the first story. But what would compound that is the fact that they'd just inherited control of gregarious simulation systems and the Oasis, which basically puts them in, control of the internet and all the social media platforms we have now, Google, Facebook, Amazon, everything rolled into one. So it's a lot of power and responsibility and influence for a bunch of teenagers to have who don't really have the life experience, and not necessarily the challenges that Halliday set up in the first book didn't necessarily prepare them for the reality of taking control of his company, especially considering this new technology that they discover at the beginning of the story. That further compounds the problems in Wade and Samantha's relationship, and I knew that would be the case because they, as laid out in the first novel, they had very different worldviews and very different ideas about what they would do with the prize money. And those ideas that they talk about when they first meet in Ready Player One kind of play out in Ready Player Two.
Gotcha. So going along with like the virtual reality and technological things, over the last decade since Ready Player One was published, your ideas have helped inspire and shape technology, obviously with, virtual reality. As video games evolve to globally connect virtual worlds where you can socialize, play games, create businesses, and basically be whoever you want to be through like a virtual identity. Ready Player One helped inspire and fuel kind of like the fire for all these things. In Ready Player Two, as you said, you envision a future further changed by this technology. You know, as you were saying, explore like the impacts, good and bad. Can you talk a little bit more about like why this is not only relevant right now, but like will just continue to grow even more relevant?
Sure. Well, one thing as I mentioned, a lot of Ready Player One, the technology I imagined in 2011 had already come about. Like we already have virtual reality headsets, and there are rudimentary haptic gloves that let you feel things in the virtual world, and even kind of prototype haptic suits that allow you to feel things. And there are omnidirectional treadmills. All of that technology is already real. And we're kind of going to reach the limit pretty quick of what you can achieve, the level of realism you can achieve with that technology. But the other technology that I think is going to drastically affect virtual reality that we're taking the first steps in developing is the brain-computer interface, which has a bunch of different names depending on the different venture capitalists that are currently developing it. But they all involve connecting a computer directly to your brain. Right now, it involves elective brain surgery. But I think if you jump a few decades into the future, it's quite plausible that we would have a non-invasive brain-computer interface that could connect your mind directly to a computer. That's something that's been explored in a lot of my favorite science fiction, all the way back to Neuromancer, which had a big influence on me. But also some science fiction films. One called Brainstorm, written by Bruce Joel Rubin, that really had a profound effect on me, and then that explores the technology of a brain-computer interface and being able to record human experience, and then other people play back that experience. It's also explored in the Catherine Bigelow film Strange Days, that explores some aspects of that human experience recording technology. But I wanted to take all of that and kind of extrapolate it from where we are in 2020 to think about where that technology could take us in a couple of decades and all the different applications of it. Because once you can record, other people's experiences, then that allows people to experience anything. And it would also make the Oasis so much more real, because you could record all these different, anything a person could experience, or any kind of taste or smell or sensation could be recorded and then simulated inside the virtual world, making it like the Matrix, making it a simulation that's indistinguishable from reality, which I think that's the final endpoint in the evolution of video games and virtual reality, is when you make it so that you can't tell the difference between the real world and the virtual anymore. Then I think it'll become, really highly addictive and hard for people, to maintain their hold on reality sometimes, because the real world would become so appealing and indistinguishable from the real world. So that was something that I wanted to explore in Ready Player 2, because I think, like I said, we're already developing this technology. People are already undergoing human trials, and there are all blind people who can see in a limited way thanks to brain implants and forehead-mounted cameras, and people who can control robotic prosthetic replacement limbs with their mind and grasp objects. So already, this technology is being developed, and the way our technology develops is almost at an exponentially increasing speed. So I think in the next few decades, we could see really incredible and horrifying things come about, depending on how we use the technology. So that's one of the things I try to talk about in my stories. I want to write a fun action adventure story, but also examine our technology and extrapolate it into the future. And you ask about how that is relevant to what the situation that we're in now, or where we're at with our technology now. We're already kind of seeing these big tech companies grapple with the sociological implications of their technology. Because in some ways, some of these social media platforms are really effective tools for brainwashing and mind control, and there has been no oversight. And we're now trying to institute some oversight after the fact, because the way that we have done with radio and television. But it's almost feels like it's too late. It's like the social media is the Wild West, and in some ways, I've seen the internet go from this thing that people, very few people knew about, to something that everybody uses every moment of every day. And now we all are tethered to it with our phone and connected to it. And in some ways, our minds are already connected to this global computer network, and it's having effects on people's, day-to-day lives, and also on the sociological and political landscape at large. So all this all this technology. I like examining the good side and the bad side of it, and show how it can both benefit and harm people's lives depending on how we use it.
No, that's awesome. As far as going along with like kind of the train of thought with kind of one of like the universal elements in Ready Player One, now Ready Player Two, has been, this technological implication of like being unhappy, kind of like with the more darker part of it, feeling out of place, characters growing up, and then finding like a place to kind of be a refuge, in that oasis, escaping, and then having a little bit of fun with it now, like incorporating a little bit of like pop culture, things that like really the feel good stuff, like leaving the bad outside world and kind of going in. Is that like, how does that like kind of resonate with you?
Well, I mean, we already kind of live that way. We kind of go and escape the real world by roaming the pop culture landscape, surfing the internet, or going through streaming channels. We have all these different modes of escape that we utilize to escape, real worlds and the real world, and give ourselves a break. But that's been the case for me since I was a kid. When I discovered books and science fiction and fantasy novels and video games and home computers, and especially role-playing games, playing Dungeons and Dragons and a bunch of different role-playing games. That all taught me about collaborative storytelling and also gave me this escape when I was young, when I really needed it. I was kind of trapped in a small town and was kind of a misfit and didn't feel like I fit in. But that, finding these different modes of escape led me to, making lifelong friends and setting me on the path to becoming a writer. So I am a fan of escapism, and I think escapism is a good thing and an essential part of modern life. You need to escape from reality once in a while, I think, to be a happy, healthy person. But like anything that humans do, some people have a difficulty, not doing it to excess. And I've definitely been one of those people, where World of Warcraft or some video game I just couldn't stop playing. I would have to go cold turkey. And I've seen some people have that reaction to social media, or different facets of technology are easily to get addicted to, especially the ones that give you like a constant dopamine rush. So I feel I am conflicted about this technology. I love it in some ways, and also I have a love-hate relationship with it, and I think a lot of people do. Love the ease that technology creates in our lives and makes a lot of things easier and less difficult, but it also creates a lot of unintended and unforeseen side effects.
Yeah, definitely. With just like how much like entertainment and information is now like just readily available. I mean, you take out your phone, snap your fingers, next thing you know, you can play like Flappy Bird. You can play whatever video games, like today compared to when you were growing up, do you think like our relationship with technology, pop culture has changed? Like, do you think audiences still bond with individual, things that they resonate, movies, books, as intensely as we did back then?
Yeah, I think people will always bond intensely with works of art, and especially like collective ones that people really are passionate about, like Star Wars. There's a whole new generation of kids discovering Star Wars now through a television show, The Mandalorian. And then that creates this giant pop culture rabbit hole that they can go down and learn about the whole lore and the films and the animated series. And it's the same with Star Trek or Harry Potter. Things like that are bond people together through shared enjoyment is always going to be hopefully, I think, a facet of our culture. But it's not quite the same as it was growing up in the 70s and 80s, because there was so much less of it. There were much fewer albums and released every year by musicians. So everybody kind of had the same songs on their radio and the same movies in their cinema, and maybe there were a couple dozen movies released a year, where now there's that many released probably every week from all around the world. So there's a lot. Pop pop culture landscape is a lot more dense, you know. And you go through the streaming channels of all these different TV shows, like, you know, and there's like a television show for everyone, and one based on every, you know, every old 80s movie now. You know, there's a Teen Wolf TV series. It blows my mind. And there are people who are rabid fans of that, and, you know, get together and argue about Teen Wolf on the internet. So I think, yes, it's changed a little bit. Maybe people argue and fan out more on the internet, but I think that's one of the positive things about this global communications network. Is it used to be you might be the only kind of Star Trek geek in your town, and the only person who loved it passionately, and you would have to only see other Star Trek fans maybe at conventions. But now the internet allows you to find all the other people in your town or your region who love the same thing, and it also gives you this online community of people who are passionate about the same works of art. So I think it's changed, but I still think the way that it connects people together, hopefully that will never change.
No, for sure. You know, as far as like just cult classic movies, etc., you know, there's definitely like a very, very strong community out there. So with the book, you know, Ready Player One adapted into like, now we're switching gears a little bit to like a movie, you know, since it was adapted into like the epic blockbuster, you know, directed with legendary Steven Spielberg, and you know, helped like co-writing the screenplay. Can you tell us a little bit about that? Like, you know, what was it like having like your debut novel turned into a movie, and also getting to be one of the screenwriters who actually made the adaptation choices with Spielberg? Was it especially crazy to have Spielberg, the man behind many of your favorites?
Yeah, no, it was unreal. You know, at some point I began to question my own life was a simulation. I was like, there's no way this could be happening, or things are going this well for me. So it was a surreal experience. But also, you know, once I got to meet him and we started the process of developing the movie, it was the best creative collaborative experience of my life. It was wonderful, and kind of what you always would hope making a movie with Steven Spielberg would be like. There's a reason he's, you know, been so successful and made so many wonderful films. Is he's such a, you know, great collaborator, and he works so well with actors and with writers. And with producers and with everyone. He's just has a natural kindness and enthusiasm and creativity that was amazing. And like you said, I grew up watching his films and loving them. And he was someone who shaped my storytelling sensibilities from a very young age and taught me how to tell great stories that, you know, moved me so much that they changed the course of my life. So it was a fantastic experience. I'll show you. Here's my signed ET copy of ET that he signed for me, and VHS. Anybody else got one of those? He signed my DeLorean too. When I first went to meet him, I took the glove box lid out of my DeLorean and took it to Amblin and meet him. And then when you brought up the DeLorean that was going to be in the movie, I'm like, oh, you know, I brought a piece of my DeLorean. Would you sign it? So I had the first DeLorean ever signed by Steven Spielberg back there. So stuff, it was full of moments like that were just surreal and wonderful, and you know, memories that I'm always gonna treasure. Yeah, so it's hard to sum up, but that's a little bit of how I feel about the experience. It was just what every writer, it should happen to every writer, what happened to me, and I assume it's all just downhill from here. Because what could ever top that? You know, I have a good imagination, but I have a hard time imagining anything that could top this experience. You know, it was released on my birthday. The movie release date got moved, so they ended up moving it, and just by accident, the release date of the Ready Player One film came out on my birthday. And we had the world premiere here in Austin, Texas, in my hometown. So Steven and the whole cast came, and we had a big screening here in downtown Austin. And I drove my DeLorean up, and the whole, you know, I got to pose with Nolan Sorrento and Ty Sheridan sitting on my DeLorean. It was just the coolest experience ever. I could go on, but I will stop. We can talk about other things.
No, you cannot ask for a better birthday present than that. That's for sure. So going into like a little bit more into like your writing process and everything, you know, obviously like with the pop culture and everything, What was life like for you when you were like a kid and young man? Like, and how did it inspire your writing?
Well, in a lot of ways, I touched on that a little bit about how, playing role-playing games and finding all these different modes of escape, comic books and Tolkien novels and things like that. That really, I think, saved me in a lot of ways when I was younger. And I didn't end up seeking, other less appealing modes of escape. I escaped into my imagination, and then, that helped me build a career out of using my imagination. But a lot of times I tell young writers that sometimes dark times in your life or times when you're not happy with your situation, those can end up being fodder for your art that helps you change your situation. That was definitely the case with me. I grew up. Part of my childhood was spent. We lived in a trailer park. I was actually in a tornado in a trailer park, which is not pleasant. And so. But like that experience of growing up in a trailer park inspired me when I was writing Ready Player One. I imagined what could be worse than living in a trailer park. And I imagined this kind of stacked trailer park, like the favelas in Brazil, where they're just stacked on top of each other. And, I put that into the story, and it ended up as an illustration on the cover of the paperback. And then it ended up as a real thing that they built, when we made the movie. In London at Leavesden Studios. It was something, as I was driving towards this set for the first time, I could see it, on the skyline. These stacked trailer towers that I had imagined had now, like, they'd got out there with cranes and welders and engineers and built them for real. So, I remember going up to Wade's stack and climbing all the way up to the top and going into his laundry room and all of it. This stuff that had originally existed, just in my imagination had now been constructed for real. It's like a powerful and unsettling thing for to happen to a writer, and really kind of showed me the power of writing and putting your imagination out into the world. Can have strange side effects. So, to answer your question, yes, in a lot of ways, growing up and all the pop culture of my youth, definitely inspired me to want to become a filmmaker and a storyteller, and specific things like that. Fed my science fiction, and I drew inspiration. Like, for many years, I worked at tech support job that I didn't enjoy a lot, but it taught me a lot about the internet and helping people use the internet, and also ended up being Wade's profession in Ready Player One for a little bit. He has to work tech support for the Oasis, and so I drew upon, again, my own experience and put it into my art. And so if I hadn't gone through those, living in a trailer park and working tech support and things like that, then it would have been a different book. But I think that's the case for most writers. Stephen King had a lot of different. I keep thinking of Stephen King's short stories, like different. So many of his. He was a school teacher for many years before he became a full-time writer, and a lot of his early characters in his novels are all teachers, because he was drawing upon his own experience of that was the one profession that he knew really well. So, and for me, it was tech support. So. Was one of them. So every writer, I think, draws inspiration from the things in their own life.
Yeah, no, inspiration can definitely just come from drop of a hat. Like,
anyway.
I did that. I feel it. I feel it. I know we've talked about Stephen King, Spielberg. Are there any more big influences, like authors, filmmakers, that you really just look at and whoa?
There are a lot. Probably two. I draw inspiration. I was a real cinephile and bibliophile when I was a kid, but I drew huge inspiration from J.R.R. Tolkien. Those books rocked my world, and when people read Ready Player Two, they'll see how much I love Tolkien, and also Kurt Vonnegut. I've always drawn a lot of inspiration from his work and his novels and his short stories and his essays. He just was a real inspiring guy for me. And he's quoted in Ready Player Two. One of the epigraphs is from a Kurt Vonnegut short story called "Unready to Wear." That was really inspiring, and one of the many stories and pieces of science fiction that helped inspire this novel.
Wow, that's awesome. As far as your novels, in general, what's your favorite thing about writing and just being a novelist? What part of the process is just the most pleasurable or satisfying for you?
Well, it's not always. It's hard work. Writing novels for me, it takes years. I'm not fast like Stephen King, and especially when I'm writing a Ready Player One or Ready Player Two, the way that I weave pop culture into the story, the puzzles and riddles and challenges are all kind of elaborate puzzle boxes that I also want to tie into the characters and develop the characters even further. So it takes me a long time to put all that together and rewrite enough that I'm happy with it. But once, I think it's, discovering things about the story myself, those moments of inspiration, like you talk about, where you're like, oh, this is perfect, or this, this will connect with that. And those moments of discovery where you're discovering things about your own story and your own characters, just through the magic of inspiration. I love that. And I also, love being finished and getting to share it with people and then hear people's reaction to it and go to book signings and, have people get to tell me, what the story meant to them or how it resonated with them, because it often resonates with people in ways that I don't expect. And that's just, I really am missing that this time around. And I'm hoping when the paperback for Ready Player 2 comes out, maybe I'll get to go out and see the awesome people who are tuned in and, shake your hands and sign your books and do that. So that's probably one of my favorite parts of the writing process as well, is, getting to hear feedback from people from all around the world. I'm lucky enough that Ready Player 2 is going to be translated into like 50 different languages, right out of the gate next year. They already have different translators working on it, which is awesome because they contacted me to ask me how to translate certain elements of pop culture into their, country's version of the pop culture or the title the movie had in their country. And so I kind of love all of it.
No, that's fantastic. Yeah. As far as, it's definitely like with the process and everything, it's just awesome to like kind of see where like an author's coming from and like what goes on in the head when like, they're putting pen to paper. Looking behind you, I'm noticing like I'm seeing the DeLoreans and everything.
That's true.
What kind of like cool? I know we mentioned a little bit about them. Like what cool experiences like have you done with them lately? I see R2 right back there. So
yeah, I've been working on my cars during quarantine and decorating for my virtual book tour. But this is Ecto-88. This is my first DeLorean that I bought, and it's the one that's in my author photo, and the one that I drove around on the hardcover tour for Ready Player One. And it's kind of my creation of Wade's Ecto-88 that he drives in the book, and it's mentioned in both novels. And it's a mashup of like my four favorite 80s super vehicles. This is my Star Wars DeLorean. And I never intended to have two DeLoreans. I bought a second one to give away in the contest that I had for Ready Player One. We had a video game contest and the grand prize was a DeLorean. And the guy who won it 4 or 5 years later contacted me and said that he didn't have room to store it. And it's not that practical of a car. It's a 2-seater. And so he was going to get rid of it and sell it, and I didn't want it to go to somebody who didn't know the history of the car. So I decided to buy it back, and then I gave it to my brother for a little while, and he helped me transform it into this Star Wars DeLorean. I just added laser cannons to the doors so that
that's awesome.
When it comes up, it locks foils into attack position. So still working on these modifications, but. Yeah, this is where I come out, and when I'm working on my books and I need a creative recharge, I come out here and geek out in my garage. But and during quarantine, that's the one thing I've still been able to do is kind of take the cars out and drive them around the neighborhood once in a while, and it makes people happy to see them, because the first time whenever I take it out, it's somebody seeing a DeLorean for the first time, and everybody reacts like they're seeing an old friend. So. But I got to, I've had so many amazing experiences as a result of these DeLoreans, Days Lorians, is what my wife calls them. Christopher Lloyd, Doc Brown, came to the premiere of Ready Player One, and we had a DeLorean there at the end of the red carpet, and he was like, hello, old friend, and he went, got up and posed with it, and we got to kind of they made a motion capture DeLorean frame on the set of Ready Player One, because all of it's happening kind of in a mocap stage, and so they made just the frame of a DeLorean that I got to check out in London. But I actually my second novel, Armada, got picked up by Universal Pictures, and Universal is also where Amblin Studios is located. So I had my DeLorean in Los Angeles last year, getting some work done on it by my buddy Danny Botkin at DMC California. There's a DeLorean shop out there, and once he added the plutonium chamber on the back for me, I got to drive it right from there to Universal Studios, and they gave me a drive-on pass because I worked there, and they just waved me through. So I got to drive Ecto 88 to Courthouse Square, where they shot Back to the Future, and parked right in front of the clock tower, and it was just drag race, try to get it up to 88 in like 50 yards. But it's the coolest. So I still, Back to the Future is one of my favorite movies. I love that we got to have the same composer as Back to the Future, Alan Silvestri, who Alan Silvestri signed my Back to the Future vinyl, the whole trilogy. He signed the whole trilogy for me, guys. So I was
right.
They had to just. That was me on the set of my own movie. It's just me geeking out on all different people, who had worked on all these things that I love. So I've not gotten Alan Silvestri in my DeLorean yet, though, but I need to. Alan, if you're watching, you got to plan to do that. But I'm rambling. I'll let you ask another question.
No, that's quite all right. So now I think we can probably transition a little bit into like audience Q&A.
Oh, sure.
Get a couple audience members who.
Thanks for tuning in. You guys for sending in questions. I appreciate it.
We've got a few over here. One of them was actually literally with a DeLorean. With the Back to the Future setup. Did you ever have anyone from the movie like actually see it in person, and what was their reaction, just to be like, whoa,
which movie, Back to the Future or the Ready Player One movie?
Ready Player One movie.
Oh yeah. The night Ty Sheridan, who played Wade Watts, he happens to live here in Austin, Texas, the same place that I do. So the night before he flew out of Austin to go to London to shoot the movie, we met up, and I let him drive my DeLorean around Austin. And that was the first time somebody involved in the movie got to see my car. And he actually ended up using that knowledge in the movie when he's driving the mocap DeLorean. He was going to look out the back window when he goes backwards, but he realized from driving my DeLorean that you can't see through the back window because of all the stuff back there. So that's why he opens the door and leans out to look back. And so it is actually beneficial for his acting process to go joyriding in my DeLorean around Austin. But then when we had the premiere here in Austin, then everybody who was in the movie got to see it because we parked it right out in front of the theater. And when we came on stage after the movie, Steven Spielberg introduced me as Mr. DeLorean, which I thought was one of the. He's like, "Here he is, Mr. DeLorean." Steven was so impressed that I actually owned a DeLorean and maintained it, and it could still drive. He got a real kick out of that.
That's fantastic. It's like just full circles everywhere, Another question would be, what was it like, collaborating with Spielberg on the adaptation of your book, as you and the other screenwriters wrote the adaptation?
Yeah, it was amazing. And I was friends with the other screenwriter as well, Zach Penn, who did a lot of the heavy lifting of changing things to make the story more cinematic. He had made a documentary called Atari Game Over that I was in, that he directed. And so we got to know each other before that. So it was just the best collaborative process ever. Zach would call me up and ask me questions, and we could discuss different aspects of it. And then, the things that we did have to change to make the movie more cinematic, I got to be involved in those, like the Shining sequence, which I still can't believe, I got to be involved in that and help Steven Spielberg recreate elements of The Shining. And especially no one else would have gotten permission to do that. It's just that he knew he was close friends with Stanley Kubrick and had worked with him and was still close with his family. And somehow, Stanley Kubrick's family came to the set of Ready Player One. His wife and brother-in-law were on the set when we were shooting The Shining. sequences. So it was just amazing, exactly like I said before, exactly what you would want, and the best experience I think a novelist or a screenwriter could have. It's the reason why everybody wants to work with him, because it's just amazing.
That's fantastic. Going along and in the same kind of thing, one aspect is certainly, writing everything out, putting it, pen to paper, trying to figure out, okay, this scene's going to be this way, this one's going to be that way. When you were on the actual physical set, what was it like to see things that had been living in your head, written about, in that, suddenly just, you're in it, you're,
it's crazy, especially going into the IOI headquarters and seeing, seeing all these, the different sleeping pods that were kind of based on Japanese coffin hotels. They had rebuilt all that with the 6-digit sixer ID numbers on everything. And all of it was just, even better than I had imagined. It was just, wonderful. I know a lot of people will for some reason, a lot of people sit down when they watch a film adaptation of a book and they kind of fold their arms it better be exactly the same as the book, when it's never, ever once been exactly the same. Not Wizard of Oz, not Lord of the Rings, not the Oscar-nominated Lord. They all had to change things, had to cut out Tom Bombadil to make the story move faster and be more cinematic. And that never robs you of your experience of the book. It's never, movies are never as good as the book, because the book plays out in the reader's imagination, which is still the best special effects platform there is. You bring yourself to the story and you address all the sets and you deliver all the dialogue, and it's, you do it in your imagination. So it's always perfect. And when people go to a movie expecting it to be as good or better than their imagination, I think they're always disappointed. It's someone else's imagination. It's a lot of different people's imagination collaborating to create kind of a greatest hits of the book, or something that captures the spirit of it. I think any film adaptation of a book, the best you can hope for is that it gives you a sense of the story of the book and captures the spirit of it and makes you want to go read the source material. But anybody who wants a note for note recreation of a book adaptation, I think that's it also wouldn't be enjoyable to watch, because they're two different mediums with completely different needs and a different time span within which you tell the story. So you do have to condense and compress things. But I think, out of all the possible, ways that Ready Player One could have been adapted, this is, by far the best I could imagine, partly because no one else would have been able to get the licenses for all the different elements of pop culture. That was one of the reasons I thought it could never be a movie. I was like, who could get the rights to all of this? And there was one person who could get the rights to all that stuff. And I was lucky enough that the script found its way to him.
So we have another question kind of along the same lines, with just how much you adore classic video games, the pop culture kind of thing. Do you play any current gen video games? Do you have any favorites?
I've been playing Star Wars Squadrons, which is kind of the updated version of X-Wing versus TIE Fighter that we had back in the 90s. And I play a lot of virtual reality games. I play Beat Saber, which is like Dance Dance Revolution in VR, but with lightsabers. I play a lot of different VR games, Half-Life Alyx, and I don't have as much time to play video games as I would like recently, but I'm excited about the new Cyberpunk to play that. Once I finish with my book tour stuff, I'm going to go down that rabbit hole. I have a home arcade, and I play a lot of old classic games and retro home video games on my Atari and stuff like that. It's all part of my creative recharging process. So I recently been playing Roblox because there's a Ready Player One Roblox event. A lot of people, it's real popular with kids, 30, 40 million people a day log in and play Roblox. And we did a Ready Player One event to promote the movie in Roblox. It was so hugely popular. It was their most popular event ever, and it kind of recreated the contest in the book. So we're doing something like that again right now in the Roblox video game platform. And there's 9 million people have already logged in to compete in this and they're running around wearing like virtual Ready Player One T-shirts and hats and stuff on their Ready Player Two swag on their avatars. So it's crazy. It's like the 2020 version of the Oasis is Roblox in some ways. So yeah, we're trying. But you know, so yeah, hopefully I answered the question. Yes, I do love and play video games still.
And another one, like, these are all fantastic. They're, you know, kind of following the trend. What are your thoughts on like the current state of like VR and AR like industry? Like, you know,
it's pretty great. I'm amazed again at how far it's advanced just in the 5 years that it's been out. We've gone from kind of the Oculus DK1 to now the Oculus Quest 2, which is more streamlined and easier to use and has better graphics. And now you don't even need a computer because the computer is built into your headset, so it's wireless, and it's amazing. I use virtual reality all the time. Like I said, to hang out with my friends in like a virtual living room. There's an app called Big Screen that lets you go into virtual cinemas, either like private cinemas just with your friend, or you can buy a ticket and go see a real new movie in 3D in virtual reality and sit in a virtual audience of strangers, but hear them react to the film too. I've really missed going to the movies this past year, and so virtual reality has kind of let me simulate that experience. It's not as real as I depict in Ready Player One yet, but it's the first kind of, I think, baby steps toward that. So I think it's really amazing what's been accomplished, and it's only going to get better every year. We already, there's amazing Star Trek games. You can pilot the Starship Enterprise with 3 of your friends and go on a bunch of different missions. And I've played that with my friends. And my friends are all in different time zones, but suddenly we're kind of all transported onto the bridge of the Enterprise and we're able to go on missions. It's amazing. And the same with, there's amazing Star Wars games that let you have lightsaber duels with Darth Vader and all of it. It's so much fun. It's a kind of another golden age of video games. Now video games are just wrapped around your face, like you're inside the video game. So it's I played really rudimentary virtual reality back in the 90s, like Dactyl Nightmare and games like that. And I could see then how once the technology got developed and less cumbersome, it would be amazing. And we're right about to reach that point.
It's fantastic. Like with a lot of like these, like just haptic, I remember like in the books, just like feeling things, smelling things, like just, I'm starting to question, like that DeLorean actually, working in a way. Do you have like any more predictions as far as like, with virtual reality, augmented reality, like technology, it's like really steadily moving along towards, a fully immersive kind of thing. And I know earlier you had mentioned, like brain implants and things like that. Do you have like any more kind of predictions in the next?
I do. Well, and they all are kind of laid out in Ready Player 2. I know some folks probably watching haven't had a chance to read it yet, but yeah, they kind of explore, like I said, the brain-computer interface, which I think is the last step in the evolution it's the last kind of computer interface we ever need to create. Because once you can plug your brain directly into a computer, it can both augment your intelligence and could record your experience and possibly your consciousness. And the applications are kind of, that's at the point when we stop being human and become transhuman and become, start to evolve through our technology. And it's already affecting us, in some ways. And some people already do have, electronic implants, pacemakers, and different things like that that make us cyborgs to some degree. But that's, only going to get more so and more acceptable and more kind of commonplace as we go along. So, that's part of the fun of writing these kinds of stories. I get to take all this technology, extrapolate it into the future, and think of how it's going to affect our day-to-day lives and how we interact with each other.
Thank you so much. This has been just amazing. For myself, a little bit like for me, the first book I purchased when I started working at the Strand was literally Ready Player One.
Wow, that's so cool.
Now it's like, it's coming full circle, again, with all the circles coming full circle. Ready Player 2 comes out on my birthday. It's could not ask for anything better, From all of us here, thank you so much.
Thank you.
For everyone out in the audience, you read and love Ready Player One. definitely get your hands on Ready Player 2. And leave some reviews, definitely helps out the authors. Again, thank you so much, Ernest. It's been fantastic.
Thank you, Luis. Thank you for making time and asking such great questions. I want to thank everybody watching at home for tuning in and for buying the book and being interested enough to come to this virtual event. I'm sorry I can't meet you guys in person and sign your books in person, but hopefully at some point in the future we'll get to do that. And in the meantime, happy holidays to everyone. And to you too, sir.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you so much.
Happy holidays, y'all.